Right, so this is my third video about breakcore. In the previous video I got a ton of feedback from you about this genre, so thank you for sharing your knowledge about breakcore, because without it I wouldn't make this video. And now I will try to address all my misconceptions, blunders and overall more things that were missed in the previous video and pointed out by you all. At first, breaks. I get it, everyone is kinda tired of always using amen in every single video and track, so here are several options and breaks that you can choose instead of amen. Here's a website which is, or actually was, a pretty nice stash of popular breaks for jungle, and so they can be used for breakcore. This domain is now empty, but using Wayback Machine you can check this list of breaks and download all of them for free. I will leave a link in the description. Second, trackers. A lot of you mentioned it, and yes, trackers are much more fitting for breakcore than regular DAWs because of the approach into working with breaks. If you don't know what trackers are, here's a very brief 101. Trackers are much older than regular DAWs like FL Studio or Ableton, and the first ever tracker was created in 1987. They were made in times when computer memory usage was #1 priority, and trackers were built in a much more optimal way. If you want to learn about them, I will leave a couple of links in the descriptions for this as well. Their interface is much more confusing than DAWs that everyone is used to, but you should view it as a spreadsheet of some sort, like Excel for example. Instead of a timeline going from left to right, it goes from up to bottom. This one that I'm showing you right now is Renoise, one of the more modern and popular trackers. Honestly, after reading a lot of posts and forums about tracker and DAW usage in breakcore, you will still get very mixed opinions. If it's not made with tracker, then it's not breakcore, and someone talks about an optimal route of combining trackers and DAWs to make the final mix. So it's more like a personal preference. For regular FL Studio, Ableton or Logic users, trackers are a bit hard to get into. At first I was really confused, but after a couple of attempts I got along with the main principles of working with Renoise, so here is a very brief and quick rundown for beginners. And by the way, if you want to learn more in depth about working with Renoise, I highly recommend videos of Grooving in G for Renoise beginners and Arcade Trauma video on breakcore basics in Renoise. And now about the tracker itself. At first, pick a break of your liking. I would suggest a simpler break at first to get a hang of it. Just drag and drop it into this window and double click on it to open up the sampler. Or you can navigate these windows in these tabs in the top. Mainly you will be switching between Edit tab and Sampler tab, which are F1 and F3 shortcuts on the keyboard. In the sampler waveform section you can press this little button near Slice option to automatically slice your break. But if you want to do it manually, you can push a slice button and add these markers yourself. You can also double click on this button to delete it. You can also select a part of your section and just press delete to delete unnecessary parts of your break. All the cuts that are made are assigned to your keyboard and this keyboard down below, so you can simply type on your keyboard and it will trigger those slices. It's the trickiest part at first to remember which button is kick, snare or hi-hat. Now having a cut down break, let's go into an Edit tab and click on the track that we are working with. Now in order to put a note in your track, you should select a place on your grid. In order to start recording, press escape and then just start pressing keyboard buttons. Use arrow keys to navigate around the track grid, left, right, up and down. These places on the right are needed to put on the effects. I will get to it later. Now in order not to get overwhelmed, here's a simple structure to follow while constructing your break. Start by adding just kicks and snares to have a starting rhythmic pattern. These highlighted lines are beats, so they will help you to navigate around the grid. Try playing with the beats and off beats at first to have a more comprehensive pattern. You can fill these spaces in between with triplets, with hi-hats, more snares to create snare rolls for example, or any left sound of your break to fill in these gaps. You also need to know where to change BPM, it's up here. LPBs, which are basically like steps that are being added in between your beats. The standard one is 4, but you might see a lot of 8s or even 16th are used in making breakcore. Going for 8 is closer to old school rave sound. In that case you can switch regular break kicks to gabber kicks, as this user mentioned it in the comments. And if you want a choppier and more stuttering sound, which is more typical for later development of a genre, go for higher LPBs, like 16 in this case. And now let's add some spice. Using effects on your beats like pitching or reversing can be done with this FX section. You can see these letters and number here, which you can basically type into your lines and add a certain effect to a specific beat. Like here I'm using arrow keys to go left and type U, short for up, and any number from 1 to 8. To select the amount of pitching it does to, pitch the sound up. Pressing 0, by the way, will clear a space if you typed something wrong. Same thing can be done to reverse samples, create snare rolls, or completely turn off a specific step with the C option. It will make this stutter choppy bits that can be heard in breakcore a lot. Obviously, it's a tip of an iceberg, because mastering this tool will take time, and these are just some basics to get you started. So by writing down effects and placing slices and getting along with your break, you can craft something like this. And from here you can practically go anywhere. You can render your break, save it in the DAW of your liking, in this case Ableton, to arrange and work with automation, chords, background sounds and mixing. If you're going for 90s old school sound, use samples or ravey acid synths. In this case I used the GABA melody loop. And slapping an already chopped beat on top of it. Additionally, to make it work, you can use saturation on the entire group or any distortion of your liking, and then just compress everything all together. This will get you to that digital hardcore type of sound. Making anything more modern can go so many different routes. I just wrote a simple chord progression, added a vital pad, duplicated MIDI clips, and added a choir for the atmosphere, and slapped a simple Reese bass on top, duplicating lower notes of the progression. Just a simple backdrop for our 16 LPBs break. There is an option to go more experimental, like Venetian Snares, Cat's album for example. In this case, I just pitched my initial drum loop 24 semitones up and slapped on a thermal distortion plugin with this preset to have this chaotic, clicky sound. And in Ableton I doubled it and added some industrial layers and loops underneath. And once again, it's only a slight bit of the top. You can create something like Audiotist that makes something between mashcore, breakcore and dancecore, or Drum Corpse that fuses metal and breakcore, I love this one, or Stamza, who is popular for his ragacore, or
Bogdan Raczyński,
who mixes IDM and breakcore elements. All of these were mentioned by this user, by the way, and a lot more. If you're interested in the breakcore's history, I highly recommend Forrest's hour-long video about it. Also, I will leave a link in the description. And once again, I'll repeat that this video only reflects a very small portion of something that can be called breakcore. So once again, if I missed something, write it down in the comments. Thank you for watching, listening to my ramblings. Hope you enjoyed this video, keep making your own sound, and bye.